What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all, man? What's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to another edition of SWAC Talk. Of course, this show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells coming at you, and we're going to continue to talk about these spring games that are taking place. We had 5 games take place yesterday. I really only got a little bit of stuff on like 3 of them. Um, PV and Valley, I don't really have anything for. So as I get things, I'm gonna drop them later in the week on Swag Smoke. But we're gonna talk about what took place in some of these games and just what to look for going forward. So before we do all of that, man, y'all check out those socials. Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Even though the basketball season is over, I'm still gonna be dropping some content on bustingbrackets.com. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on another article now on transfer portal, so I'm going to probably drop that sometime this week if I can get it finished up. So y'all keep it locked on the socials to find out when that hit the web. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share, and comment. And let's go ahead and start it off, man. We're going to start off with the defending SWAC champs, the FAMU Rattlers. They had their spring game yesterday, their orange and green game. And this game was a low scoring affair, which is not a surprise when you have a defense like the Dark Cloud defense. Even though they lost some big names, they're still going to be a really solid defense against the offense that's learning new things with new quarterbacks and new other skill guys. The game was a 14-7 game, but there were some bright spots from the Rattlers. Junior Maritovic looked pretty good in this game, and my stuff is coming from the Tallahassee Democrat. Um, they stated that Junior Maritovic had a big game, had a solid game in this outing. Um, he threw 2 touchdowns. He led the team on 80 yards on that opening game score. He had appeared in 6 games last season, threw for about 138 yards. But in Saturday's game, he threw 2 touchdowns. It led to only successful offensive drives of the day. He shined also in the 7-on-7 periods. Coach Colsey was impressed with both his quarterbacks, both Junior Maritovic and Daniel Richardson. He's not ready to declare a starter yet, and that's probably a theme of most of these games this weekend. I don't think anybody cemented anything as a starting quarterback, but Coach Colsey said, and I quote, "At the start of the day, I thought Junior had made some really, really good passes. Daniel made some really, really good passes as well. So I think we can wait and see who that quarterback will be as we navigate the summer." Richardson started slow in the game. He won the best quarterback honors in the spring, but he started out kind of slow. He threw 3 interceptions on the day, but he looked strong during practice and struggled a little bit in the game situations, which is kind of to be expected when you going with guys that you only have been around for 14 or 15 practices. So you're still learning some things, and defense flying around and making some plays. So he made some mistakes, but he also bounced back pretty strong. Coach Cozy again went on to state, "I thought Junior and Daniel did a really, really good job in the spring. We're not going to make any decisions, not because these 2 guys didn't necessarily separate themselves, but I think both guys did well." So it's he's kind of hedging his bets on both sides. I think he's going to let this play out and see who takes the leadership reign, who kind of takes that step in the summertime and going forward in the fall camp. Really seeing who is gonna be the guy. Both those are the 2 guys battling it out. There's multiple other guys on the roster, but those are the 2 guys who are gonna battle it out. And I still think Richardson's gonna come out on top in this job. You can't discount his experience. Yes, 3 interceptions is not good, but it's a spring game. Those things can be cleaned up. So I still think that he's gonna be the guy that comes out of this ahead. I think it's gonna be a tough battle. I don't think Junior's gonna quit. I don't think he's gonna stop pushing, and I think he's gonna make Richardson earn his job. But I do think Richardson is gonna come out on top. The defense stole a show on Saturday. They forced 4 interceptions and only allowed 1 touchdown from the offense. Um, the Rattlers finished the season as the number two defense in the country, and they still look like they're going to be pretty strong, even with the takeaways and limited offensive action. Coach Cozy is looking for more out of his defense, and he went on to state, "We did some good things turnover wise, but I didn't think we played as fast as we normally had played on defense. We got to make sure we sure up some things personnel wise to make sure we are where we need to be once we start the season. The secondary was strong against the pass, forcing 5 interceptions, including 1 pick 6 and a slew of incompletions. Across the board, the defense showed promise with a handful of tackles for loss and sacks. While the offense only rushed a few times, the front seven looked strong against the run, allowing very few yards on the ground at the contact, which that defense was tops in the league in rushing. So you don't expect that much of a difference. They still return some very good, solid guys, and they have some, some depth and some quality guys coming in. So the defense is still going to be really, really good. Um, with the starters facing off on both sides, um, you kind of got an idea of what's what with ones against ones. Iron sharpens iron for me. Coach Cozy said, "I want to see the ones go against the ones. We don't play twos or threes when we play Norfolk, so I wanted to see how we react against each other with our ones versus our ones." Um, One name that really stood out on in the game was FAMU defensive back Andre Powell. He had 2 interceptions on the night. He picked off Richardson twice in the first half, including a nice jump on a route for his first interception. Like I said, the Rattlers had one of the strongest defenses in the league, and they returned Kendall Bowler as well in their secondary. Powell had a strong showing in the spring game, covering well and forcing a few incompletions alongside the interceptions. Those guys made plays for us when we were making that run for the national championship. Coach Cozy said Andre Powell was a guy that sat behind Javon Morgan last year, so now his opportunity is here to make some plays. After appearing in 11 games last season, Powell recorded 14 tackles in 2023 and showed promise in the spring game that he could have an improved season for himself and the defensive back room this fall. One last thing Cozy stated before we close this out. He said that's another reason why I did the ones versus the ones, so our DBs get a chance at our number one and number two quarterback on our team, how they react against guys like Jamari Gassett and other offensive players. So he really emphasized the fact that they went one versus one and not mixing up the teams, which that's something I don't mind when you do a draft. You mix your team up. You kind of make it for a interesting game. You give guys opportunity to play with other guys that they may not get to play with. But I still love to see my ones against ones because I want to really know if my guys are making those plays, like they're making them against my best guys, and not necessarily against not necessarily you have a starting wide receiver against like a third string DB. So it gives you a better idea, and like they say, iron sharpens iron. But that's pretty much what FAMU spring game was, and that was not unexpected. You expected the defense to come out on top because the defense is very experienced and they're very good against the offense that's being led by new guys at quarterback, and there's new guys in the receiver room. There's guys stepping up all over the place. So I'm not surprised by that outcome. And it definitely gives them something more to work on. Um, just another couple quick things about Southern. I'm not going to really go super in depth on this because I did have a video yesterday. So if you didn't miss it, link will be in the description. And also at the end of the video, you can click on the box and check it out there. The main thing that came out of Southern game was, one, the defense had a very good beginning of the game. They really made a lot of plays against all three offenses. Um, they really kind of made things tough. They had a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of sacks. Didn't really give up a lot on the ground, but there was not a lot of running in this game, which is something that you tend to see in these kind of games. But they made it hard for for the quarterbacks to get open, to get free and make some plays. Um, Eventually, the offenses started to kind of find their rhythm. All three quarterbacks ended up passing for 2 touchdowns apiece. Noah Biden, he finished the night with 256 yards, 14 to 31, and 2 touchdowns. He had no interceptions. Jalen Woods was running with the second team. He was 15 to 28 for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. And Xavier T-Set finished 10 of 23 for 191 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. He also had 1 interception. Defensively, there were a few offside penalties. Um, Not as much as you probably have seen over the course of the season. I think they're starting to clean that up. Some of it was guys just being, excited and, trying to get that quick step to get to the quarterback. Offensively, there were a ton of pre-snap penalties, and that's something to be expected with a new offense and a new O line. A lot of guys who are playing in the skill spots that haven't really played that much. You're gonna get all of those mistakes. So those are things that can be cleaned up between now and the season, and you gotta hope that this team doesn't have a lot of those shoot themselves in the foot penalties like they did last season, where you're starting on 1st and 15, you're starting on 2nd and 15, 2nd and 16, and putting yourself in 3rd and longs. You're not gonna move the ball against anybody like that. So you gotta cut down on those penalties. Um, there were a few guys, the receiver, who made some plays. But all in all, I think it was a mixed bag, and not in a bad way. It just was like some good, some bad. I don't think there was anything that make you look at this team and say they're not gonna be in the mix. But there's not a lot coming out of this game for you to say that they're gonna be a front runner, which I typically tend not to do in springs. Um, don't want to really get too far ahead of your skis in those kind of situations. But I thought that there was some good promise on both sides of the ball, and obviously some things to clean up. Didn't really get a great look at the special teams unit. They only really did extra points. They didn't uh, do very much else in special teams. So still a lot of things to take away from there. The D line, I thought they looked pretty solid. The linebackers didn't really make a lot of mistakes. The secondary, they blew some coverages late, but that's a unit that's breaking in a few new guys. Other than Rodney Johnson at corner, there's going to be a lot of new guys, at least guys who didn't start last season, to step in and play in those valuable positions. So I think this was something positive to come out of this game. I don't think it was anything um, that was just really concerning. So I expect to see them continue to battle it out at quarterback. I think that this is going to be a battle that goes into fall camp and maybe even coming out of fall camp. For any team, I think your quarterback needs to be nailed down, but by the start of the season. If a guy can separate himself before that, then that's great. But you don't want to go into the early portion of the season still trying to figure out that guy. And yes, Southern has a non-conference game against McNeese, but that's a game that you need to win. So you need to be steady at that spot. And I think the running game is going to help Southern a lot this season. Having Kobe Dillon being healthy, Kendrick Grimes should be back healthy. C.J. Russell is another guy who can run the ball for them, and Braylon Morgan is a guy who can kind of do a little bit of everything out the backfield. So the offensive line to me is the biggest question mark for Southern, and that can't really be answered until the season starts. So we'll see how they do in that position. But for the most part, I think that this was a pretty solid effort for Southern. Still a lot to be cleaned up, but it can be done. The last game that I really have anything on, and I don't really have any concrete numbers or anything, but Texas Southern, their spring game, their defense won the game. I think it was 28-27, but offensively they made some plays. Jordan Davis and Jace Wilson. Why I say Jace Wilson. Both ran the offense pretty well. Um, there's still going to be a lot of uncertainty with this team, with a new head coach and Coach Dishman and new coordinators and new staff in general. And, losing guys like um, Darius Owens, um, Corey Howard, and even a guy like Quay Davis, who didn't necessarily put up the best numbers, but was a bigger guy that could make some plays. And defensively, you're losing some solid guys, so there's some holes to be filled. And this was a team that didn't really fulfill expectations from last season, so you kind of have to, this is it's not a square one start over, but this is a team that's gonna have to find their way around. I think they really need to make some things happen. And starting off a Prairie View is going to be a tough battle for them. Um, Coach Dishman is already pushing that game, but I think that they have to kind of find out who they are and what they are. So they're claiming that the quarterback job is still wide open. I even if Davis has had a great spring, I just don't see how you unseat a guy who started 10 games and was really good. I mean, Jace Wilson was the newcomer of the year. I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback, but I think that he would have to underperform to lose that job more than a guy performing well. That's just my opinion. So I think some of that might be lip service um, to kind of push him more. But it also kind of shows that they're building that confidence in the guy behind him. So I think they're trying to set it up so either guy can come out of it on top. But I still think Wilson's going to come out on top in this job, because you can't underestimate experience. A guy that started 10 games, started all 8 conference, or started 7 of 8 conference games, and put up some really good numbers. So I think you can't discount that, and I think that that's going to be your guy when they step on the field against Prairie View. Um, don't have anything really from Prairie View as far as what I've been able to gather right now. I didn't really do a lot of research, but I hadn't really come up on nothing. The only thing that was Prairie View news for me right now was that Clifton McDowell actually ended up committing to McNeese instead of Prairie View. On the report Thursday was that he was on campus for a visit. There was also a rumor that he had committed to Prairie View, but he ultimately ended up committing to McNeese, which means that if you're a Southern fan, you still got to face this guy again anyway. So um, that's a little interesting tidbit. But I thought that could have been a good addition for Prairie View offensively. Obviously, with a guy coming in after spring, he's gonna have to hit the ground running in the summer and the fall. But he has the experience. He started at Montana. I think that missing out on that guy is not a death blow to your team, because I still think a guy like Cam Peters could get the job done. But I think having a guy that has played FCS football and is very experienced, I think missing out on that guy could be a difference maker for a team who needs difference makers at that position. So don't really, like I said, don't really have anything else on them. And Valley, I don't have anything yet. So we'll continue to get that stuff and bring it to you. But with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC, C Wells, signing out, and I'm gonna catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.